Hello, everyone. Welcome to Challenging Your Status Quo, the go-to podcast for those seeking success that resonates on every level. Our guide on this journey to success is J.A. Dava, co-founder of Latreia Coaching and Consulting. Each episode, we challenge you to step outside your comfort zone in redefining holistic success. Because in order to truly excel, one must rise in all aspects of life: spiritual, physical, relational, and philanthropical. So buckle up. Let's explore how your vocation and well-being can harmonize perfectly. And give a warm welcome to the host of Challenging Your Status Quo, J.A. Dava.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is J.A. Dava, head coach over at Latreia Coaching and Consulting. Welcome to Challenging Your Status Quo. What an incredible episode this will be, because my special guest today is an incredibly, just a good man overall. And it will unfold right in front of you guys. But one of the things that I definitely want to be able to let you know is that investment of time, investment of your desire to build relationships is something that's important. I've known this man for a long time. We got separated just because our business kind of takes us in every direction, but always kind of admired him from the outside in as time has gone on. And that's where the beauty of social media really kicks in. But so without further ado, I want to be able to just kind of introduce you as we start talking about, yes, the vocational well-being, right? So most of you come here because of a need and maybe hearing something on the vocational side that you'll be able to walk away with. But we hope to be an inspiration. We hope to be able to just be an encourager to you in what I think is a very, very unique market. But so you're here for the vocational side of it. But as always, challenging your status quo, we want to be able to unfold other well-beings, right? So there are 4 other well-beings that we tend to talk about when you join us. So it's not just your vocational well-being. There are 4 other ones that we will try to blend in there. And that is spiritual well-being, relational well-being, physical well-being, as well as your philanthropical well-being. So with that said, today we're going to be concentrating a little bit on not only vocational, but with a balance in here of how important relational well-being comes into play. In other words, your family, your friends, that investment of time that I opened up the show with. And then also we'll talk a little bit on the physical sense. By the time it's all said and done, you really can't do life without all 5 of these well-beings happening in your life. And there's no better person than I know to be able to join us today. This gentleman that I'll be having on has been in the business, in the mortgage business, mortgage real estate business, financing, all of that. So he said for me to tell you guys that he's been in it for between 20 and 40 years. All right. So it kind of gives you an idea what that range really is. Usually people don't tell me how long they've been in the business as a range, but when they go to that ultimate end of that so-called 20 to 40, gives you a little bit of an idea. This guy's very, very seasoned. He's well respected and well known in the industry. And on top of that, he is with probably one of the greatest companies out there. It's Fairway Independent Mortgage. He is an SVP of business development as well as recruiting. So with that, I'll stop talking. Let me introduce him on. His name is Kevin Podner. And I want to welcome you, Kevin Podner, to Challenging Your Status Quo. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on our show. And Kevin, before I even really get going on asking questions and just you and I having our conversation, please tell us just a little bit more about really who you are, your journey in the inside of that 20 to 40 years of what you call our business. So,
well, I really appreciate the 20 to 40 year introduction. Let me make that clear. But, I've right from college, I haven't done anything but lending. So that's the way I got started. I got started as a lender, right? As most people that may get promoted, in their career, you start out as a lender, you have some success, then you start to manage, and then you go from there if you want to. So I've managed anywhere of a low of 2 people to 165.
Wow.
So, but then again, you don't do that over a 5-year period. That's why we're saying 20 to 40 years, right? So, there's a lot of different parts of the mortgage environment that you've lived through if you've been in the business this long.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, you know what? One of the things, uh, Kevin, that in this business, it is as wide as it is across the country and everything else. Um, it's a very small knit community, don't you think, Kevin?
For sure. For sure. I mean, there's people that like you say, you don't see for a while, then they come back full circle and you end up working at the same company.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
the news gets out quick, right? It's a tight knit group in the business right now.
Yes. Yes, it is. So once again, you're. I know that you're incredibly seasoned in this business, and this business right now is unique. I like to use the word unique, by the way, Kevin, because a lot of people use other uh,
That's for
other
sure.
words to describe our business right now. But I do find that it is unique because, bottom line, business continues on and on and on. And there are some that are struggling, some that are incredibly successful still. But Kevin, I want to just kind of start us off by just kind of talking about the vocational side of our well-being. You've been in this business inside of there's 20 to 40 years, and is it the same? Is this something that we've seen in the past? And what? Just give me a little bit of your crystal ball, a little bit on the business. What's your thoughts so far on what's happening in the business today?
Well, the interesting part of the business, say the last 18 months, is if I go back, there's parts of our current business that are very similar to today, but I don't think I've seen those parts together at once. We've lived through high rates, we've lived through low inventory, we've lived through, I would say, post COVID, right? Because that has to be part of this. But I haven't seen all this together before.
Yeah.
So having conversations, outside of Fairway with several people a day, uh, there's stress out there. And, I know I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know, but the stress at the job with the business being down can lead to stress on the personal side, right?
No, for sure.
You
Absolutely.
know, and I get that over the phone. I mean, a lot of times people want to talk. They may not want to move, but they certainly want someone to talk to.
Yeah.
So, um, I think there's people that are worried about their lender, of course, right? We've seen numerous changes in the industry with companies, merging and closing. Uh, I think that I think some are going to stay put. Some are a little bit scared to move.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of tension out there. But I think one thing a lot of people don't talk about is I think there's this factor with what we went through in COVID. Business was up. We were still stressed out, but it was a different type of stress. Making money, then it just on a dime went from I'm taking 3 or 4 applications a week to I'm lucky if I'm taking 3 or 4 a month
Right. Right.
without any time period for a loan officer to adjust. So going from the right to the left in that business, I think, has created some exhaustion in the business.
Yes.
And what I hear from loan officers, and one thing that comes up quite often, and I even tell the loan officers that I'm recruiting, you know, call your book of business, because
Yes.
apparently most aren't. Call and contact your book of business. A lot of the top loan officers right now that are gaining market share are calling their book of business, and they're getting an extra loan or two a month. With
That's
a,
really, yeah, that's really interesting, Kevin, as you're bringing that up because you know as a coach, I'm exposed to what people are doing, and there's an awful lot of push towards new technology, like and when I talk technology, you can just tell I've also been in the business for quite some time, kind of a dinosaur in the business, so to speak. But when I talk about technology, I'm talking about technological communication, such as podcasting and social media and all of those. But what you just said is something that that's old school. right? It's old school mentality, calling your database, right? Because there's an awful lot of activities right now that loan officers are doing wrong, right? They're doing it wrong. And so that's just one of the, what you just mentioned, by the way, is one of those things they're doing wrong, because database mining is the richest place you can go to right now, right? So expound on that just a little bit. I mean, do you agree, first of all, that a lot of loan officers that you're seeing right now are doing things wrong?
Well, I would probably say that, I don't know, 8 out of 10 aren't
Yeah.
aren't they're set in the CRM with their database, which you have to do.
Yes.
You want the automatic marketing to stay in front of the customers. But if you call and check in with the customer, keeping in mind that consumer debt is at its highest level, but so is the equity while you're making that call. Some are going to be just fine, some aren't going to be fine. But who has really talked to that borrower where their payments have went up? They may have student loans coming due now, right? Because we have those coming due now.
Yes.
We know down the road the rates will go down. Let's save $1,000 a month now. You could refinance later.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of the loan officers are missing. Now, that being said, I talked to a lot of top loan officers, and most of them are pretty adamant they're contacting between 5 and 10 customers a week. They want to have a conversation with 5 or 10 customers a week. It's leading to 1 or 2 applications a month or loans a month. My suggestion would be, when you have that conversation with a borrower, do one more old school thing. Send a handwritten thank you card a few weeks later.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Those 3 together, the CRM, the phone call, and the card, it's hard to beat that. You will get results if you're a loan officer.
Absolutely. And going just a little bit further than that, even, Kevin, right? One of the things that I'm finding out is that where the business has changed, and it started with the real estate world. And, our audience knows that I'm a realtor as well. But one of those things is that even in the real estate business, we all talk about ready, willing, and able people, right? That's who we're looking for. And so when you compound that, think about this for a sec. When we compound that with how we tell people how we're busy, maybe it's a protective mode, maybe it's an ego thing, whatever it may be. We're so busy, we're so busy, we're so busy. And then you couple that with what people think kind of leads you on, which is ready, willing, and able. Now you're really behind the 8 ball, because in today's world, you're not looking for the people who are ready, willing, and able. You want those, but you got to start now developing those relationships. You want everyone and anyone that's beginning to start educating themselves on mortgages and all real estate. You want them from the very beginning, and you need to almost become that resource, because by the time someone's handing it to you, your friends are thinking, Kevin's too busy, so I'm not going to give this one right now because they're a year out. But we all know buyers don't know what their timeline is. So
Right.
If I wait it out as your friend, not give it to you, by the time they get hot, by the time I give it to you, they're going to say, no, I've already talked to like 3 or 4 loan officers, so I don't need another one.
Right.
And it's a lost cause. And so you need to start taking that old school and actually have conversations with people. And maybe the easiest script you can do is to let them know that 2023 was a tough one, coming out of COVID and everything else. 2024, I'm here to stay. And I would love for you to think about me top of mind, right? For anyone that's looking or just beginning the process of even getting a new mortgage and or purchasing a new home, keep me top of mind. People need to know what you're doing. So I love the old school stuff because it gets the job done, right?
It's the combination of everything. And I've heard different statistics on this, but loan officers are retaining anywhere from 19% to 30% of their book of business.
Yeah.
So, they're losing their business to best friends. They're losing their business to the family barbecue, or, some other gathering where someone says, I just went here, and, they haven't heard from their loan officer in a while. They just get emails, that they don't read.
Right.
That's where it goes.
Right. Right. So I love old school, and I still believe that the most successful loan officers are doing a combination of everything that you just said, the CRM, right? Which is really quote unquote modern technology. If you think about the journeys that you can set on CRMs, but to having that ability to go ahead and return calls whenever you're sending something out. In other words, you're chasing people to have relationships with them, and then sending out, I'll even go as far as to say, send out some snail mails every so often because they get opened, right?
Right. That's right. You once again, you got to do it all. You got to do it all. I think overall, someone has to look at their business as succeeding right now instead of succeeding when rates might go down next year.
Yes.
Because you're not doing yourself any good. And those that survive into that time frame are going to be very, very, very successful.
Yeah. So in fact, let me tag to that for just a sec, because you just made a really, really important point, right? Because there's an awful lot right now crystal balling their way. Even people I'm coaching are crystal balling it, saying, I'm just trying to plant as many seeds I can because I know rates are going to drop next, probably in the next 3 months, 4 months, or whatever, right? And so, but talk to me about this dynamic. Even if that were to happen today, right? So let's just say it drops a 0.5%. Okay. So people are thinking that they're going to build like crazy. Think about all the buyers that all of a sudden will surface when the inventory is low. What will happen to the prices of homes at that point? And will that 0.5% really make a difference? I mean, Kevin, what's your thoughts on that, right?
My thoughts are, if someone finds the home that they want today, they should strongly consider buying.
Yes.
Because the price they'll pay for that home in a year is going to be much higher than whatever extra interest rate they pay for that time period.
Correct. Whatever savings, because I don't think it, Kevin, in the most optimistic way, I think it might drop. I don't know, but I'm still crystal balling that as well, right? But it might drop significantly, probably not. But as soon as those buyers hit the market, because all of a sudden realtors are saying, hey, it's dropped a 0.5%. This is the time to buy right now. It's just going to skyrocket those low inventory houses into even catastrophic heights, right?
Yes.
And you might actually lose out on that with a better interest rate, but a higher. I mean, can you just imagine, right?
That's for sure. I mean, like I say, that if you're on the first-time home buyer side, if it's a $200,000 house, you may be paying $220,000 in a year, or just maybe an outright fight.
Yes.
With cash buyers back to the people paying over purchase price and all that.
So you already mentioned like 3 different things, right? Make sure that you are creating and really focusing on making sure that your CRM works, and that it has certain journeys inside of them. In other words, campaigns and things like that, utilizing that automation, but at the same time, picking up the phones and making sure that you set a number, by the way, which is spot on, by the way. And that is, they probably have about 10 conversations with their folks on a monthly basis, right? And out of that, they'll probably get 2 of their so-called loan applications out of that. But the one number that comes before that even is the conversations, maybe 10, but the amount of calls that you would make to get to those 10 conversations is probably 10 times that, right? So, and that's just where the market is today. And so just think about that. Take the losses, in other words, the ones that hang up on you, the ones that don't want to take your calls and stuff like that, it's almost a good thing. You got to get through it to be able to find the 10 that will talk to you, that will lead to the 2 closings. So I love that pattern. But is that do you agree that they should be making calls just about every single day, really?
Yeah, I think there's a time management part of this, right? And
yes.
You have to be really stubborn and disciplined about it. That's probably only 30 minutes a day to just rip off those calls. The only bad thing that would happen is if you talk to a few more people you didn't expect to talk to, but that's a good thing. Right. So you take 30 minutes, you could probably do an hour every other day, or 45 minutes, 2 or 3 days, but it's not as much or as hard work as it sounds.
It's not. And by the way, it's got to be deliberate, right? I mean,
Yep.
you got to time block it out, guys, and you got to make sure. And Kevin's speaking wisdom, guys, for sure, because you got to be deliberate about how you're doing this. Because even if you were, I will tell you right now, based on my coaching and everything else, that if someone really truly spent a half an hour a day, Kevin, what you just said, in what is called prospecting. And I'm talking just dialing for dollars, calling their database. You don't even have to go too far away looking for leads, just your database alone. If you spend a half an hour a day doing that during your working time, you will be eons ahead of yourself already, because most people will not do that. They say they will, but they don't do it.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, the number of people that have told me they don't do that is almost makes me want to get back and start originating.
Right. Because it's kind of like, guys, if you're listening to this, you're a loan officer, take advantage of other people's incompetencies and of their business, right? I mean, that's it sounds so harsh to say it that way, but listen, what is the formula? Talk, right? Talk.
That's right. It's conversations.
It is conversations. It's relational. It's all of these kind of things. And you said something that was very, very important. And it had to do with time blocking, time management. And I'm going to transition over to, because you've already given the golden nuggets. And I certainly hope people take us up on that, right? But here's the thing. I believe that you and I have one thing for sure in common without even thinking about it. And that is there are 24 hours in a day. Period. There's not more, less for either one of us. And if you really think about it this way too, Kevin, I want your thoughts on this one, because I don't know if you've ever sat down and really thought about this, but you realize that there are 8 hours that we could dedicate to work, period, vocation, right? But then there's 8 hours, that makes it 16 total, that we could put into sleeping. And then we have 8 hours. This is the mind-blowing part of it. We have 8 hours of quote unquote recreational time. And we all have it. And so let's just look at that from a vocational standpoint. What would a true 8-hour day look like if we were to just implement that 5 days a week, Kevin?
Well, this business is about learning.
Yes.
You win from learning, right? But it's a grind. It's a grind. You're doing a lot of the same things every day. So you have to reset.
Yes.
It's not a perfect science, but whether you're originating, you're a producing manager and you're doing both recruiting and originating, or someone like myself that's recruiting, you're still doing a lot of those same things every day.
Yeah.
So there has to be a point in time where you reset, right? I work out in the morning. I go pretty hard for 4.5 or 5 hours. Sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 6, just depending on schedules, right? But at some point in time, you have to reset.
Yes.
You have to completely reset. You have to cleanse any of that drama in the industry or negativity, or maybe you've had a kind of an emotional phone call with a recruit, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of people finding out that their company closes, stuff like that. You have to completely cleanse yourself of all that and go right back at it again.
Yes.
Whether that's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you go right back at it. And everyone's a little bit different. They got to have a little bit of different schedule just for family reasons, but you have to find a way during the day to recharge.
Yes. And you know what? That's so true, because that is where I'm going with this whole thing is 8 hours of relational time is actually there to be had, right? It just really depends on how you run your day. And it doesn't have to be 8 hours, by the way. Those are just the ideal world of all sorts of different things. But if you think about it, if you concentrated on non-time waster events in your vocational world, it's kind of like that half-hour thing that you just coached everybody on. You just make calls for a half an hour every day that you work. You're going to be astronomically ahead of the game, right? But can you imagine taking that to the hilt, where every minute of your 8 hours a day of vocation is concentrated on vocation? Because the average loan officer, by the way, will waste anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours a day on things that were never planned to be a part of that working 8 hours. A friend comes walking in, they sit down, a fellow loan officer sits down at their desk, they're talking about what happened in the ball game over the weekend. That turns into 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and all of a sudden somebody says, "You hungry? Want to go get a cup of coffee? Let's just go get a cup of coffee real quick." Real quick turns into another half hour, another 45 minutes. And next thing you know, you come back and you've sat down and you've just wasted 2 hours. And that's not even to mention that when people wake up, the first thing they do is pick up their phones and look at their cell phones. The next thing you know, an hour, hour and a half is gone because they've been flipping through social media and everything else. I mean, the time wasters, the 8 hours, the minute you give those 8 hours away, then you have to rob them from other parts, from the 8 hours of sleep or the 8 hours of relational side of it, which, Kevin, this is why I wanted to have you on the call. One of the things I really admire about you, Kevin, and I love just picking and choosing exactly who would be on the show. And one of the things that I look for is that I believe, number one, that you've got to be successful in what you do, right? Successful in vocation. Yes. And you obviously have worked your way up the ladder on that. But the other side of it is the thing that I kept seeing in social media is that your family means everything to you. I mean, you don't just, I see a lot of posts from a lot of people about their work, their material stuff, right? Sitting in front of their Maseratis and sitting in front of their beautiful big homes, their boats, which is all good. I'm not looking down on that. If that's what drives you, it drives you, but at what cost, right? What cost? Because I know some of these guys are family members, but I never see their family. Yep. So what you don't do that. You just don't. I see you with your family. Tell me first and foremost what that really means to you. How does relational well-being come into play in your life? How important is it to you?
Well, family's first for me. Even though a really, really, really close second will be, helping people be successful. Yes. Family's first. Myself and my wife got married in 1990, and it's different before you have kids. So we didn't have kids for 10 years. So it was just us, right? We're living for us. We're working for us. We're making income for us, right? But then, we had our first child, and then we had our second child. The boys are 20 and 23 now. And it flipped a switch with me because early on in this business, I had the opportunity to see a lot of people, maybe even older than me at the time, older, getting ready to retire. And it just dawned on me, they're not leaving anything for the family. They're not making good choices with 401k and just putting money back, right? So part of it was when I had the kids is like, this is no longer about like living while we're living. This is, I want to set these kids up for when we're unfortunately not here. Right. So that's really what's driven me probably the last 75% of my career.
Yeah. And you've been able to, I tell you what, Kevin, there's an awful lot of people that wouldn't even begin to know how to begin that process of balancing out family time and work times, right? And here you are, you're talking about even beyond your lifetime existence with your family members. I mean, you're setting them up. You're already thinking so far ahead. It's kind of like setting a goal so far out there that you can't help but hit the immediate goals because you're already looking way beyond that. But Kevin, did that just happen out of nowhere? Have you always been such a family man like that, or was there any part of you that had to go through kind of a reawakening and realize, oh my gosh, I need to be able to make sure that I'm well balanced here and well balanced there? And I'm always told as an interviewer, never ask the question you don't know the answer to, And I'm breaking that rule right now because I don't know how you're going to answer that question. But was there a turning point, or maybe it's always been who you are? So
I think there's always a couple turning points. The turning point for me is when I had kids. I think obviously that puts a different dynamic on everything.
Yeah.
But I've also seen, unfortunately, families that, lost loved ones, and they kind of mismanaged things, and there wasn't anything left, whether it was financially or anything else. There was just nothing. There was no thought process into what you want things to look like afterwards.
Yeah.
I know I'm skipping to the afterwards part, but it also, regardless of what the children's choices are, set money back for education.
Right.
Just a lot of simple stuff. But the switch was when I had kids, and then it anything related to that just gave me more and more and more drive.
Yeah.
Where I don't want them to be on their own as much as I can control it.
So the focus became so much more than just you at that point. Yeah. And that is an incredible driver, right? Especially when you're just holding this little thing, right? You're a fairly built person, right? So I'm sure that when your little boy was in your hand the first time, right? And I'm only 5'8", and I remember holding my little one in my hands and feeling like the most delicate thing in the world, right? And just,
I know.
And looking at that and going, oh my gosh, I'm responsible for this.
That's right.
Right.
Everything changes, but it's for the good.
Yes.
It's a great thing.
And looking way beyond that, because so tell me about your family dynamics. So obviously married I was doing
the math. 34 years in June.
34. And you have two boys. You and I have that in common as well. So we have two boys. And so when I say I admire things that I see on social media and everything else and what you concentrate on, which I think speaks loudly, your two boys are right there, right next to you. Tell me about that, your relationship with your boys. And, I'm sure there's always two sides of that coin, right? You've had your good, bad, and differences. But tell me just a little bit about your investment in your boys and what are some of the things that you feel in your wisdom, because now you've raised them accordingly, what you've done right. I mean, that sounds like a really hard question, but what do you think you've done right? I'm sure you've done a lot of wrong. But
it's interesting you asked that, because I don't know, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and me and the wife were having dinner, and like I say, I've been successful in the business, and I told my wife, I'm like, did I balance this out the right way? Did I spend a little bit too much time on the business side of it? And we were just having that conversation. But back to the two boys, the older one, John, 23 years old, and they're opposites. I'm just going to tell you right now. I don't know if I'm going to get into all those details, but they're opposites. At 5 years old, John told us he's going to work for Apple. He was close. He ended up majoring in computers. He went to a 2-year trade school, got a call from his old high school. He was a teacher at age 20.
Wow.
So what's interesting about being a teacher at age 20 is he came home the first day saying, Dad, all my classes just filled up really quick. And he was teaching kids that were freshmen when he was going to high school.
Wow.
So
close in age, right? He was teaching people close there.
And he found his calling.
Yeah.
Then the younger one is, graduating a 2-year community college next week. He's going to go to another university for his next 2 years. So, I want to say from that standpoint, they're kind of on their way as best they can be at that age.
Yes.
There's always some ups and downs, some stuff that really doesn't matter in real life.
Right.
It seems like it's a big deal. It isn't really a big deal down the road. So you got to keep them kind of in the pocket. But, the boys still have dinner with us. That's a great thing. When they can.
Yes, it is.
We go to concerts, together. We still go on vacation. So we kind of keep that going, but that's this part of the thing that drives me. I want to be able to do those things for them.
As nonchalant as you say those words, by the way, there are listeners right now understanding that they've got some really, really young ones. And I will tell you that because mine are 25 and 27. And, that whole idea of them wanting to still go on vacation with you, them wanting to have dinner with you, and for that matter, going to concerts with you with the same type of likeness of music and everything else is a balance on its own, is not just something that happens, right? It's not something that happens. There is an investment of you. So do you feel that, I mean, do you feel like you did certain things? You must have done something right, because that's what I see on your posts.
We always believe we did some things right, at the end of the day, they're going to be on their own at some point, right?
Yes.
And that's beginning to happen now, so, but, I think when you look back, you always want to believe that you did everything you could.
Yes.
What
would you say then to some of the folks right now, right? It's never too late, no matter when, to start building that relational side of you, by the way, right? But for those that are listening right now, they're about to start climbing that corporate ladder and are very driven that way. Nothing wrong with that, again, right? But what would you tell them to make sure that, you gave them something on the vocational side. Now we get the relational side of it. What would you tell them? What tidbit would you have for anybody that is thinking about, how do I balance this? What would you say, Con?
It could be some of the simplest things, but this is a really good question, because you're talking about people that could be, they're increasing their business, they're building a corporate ladder. You know what that means? That means a lot more time,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I would say just randomly give your kid a call.
Yes.
Every other day while you're working, take 5 minutes. Hey, how are you?
Yes.
I mean, little things like that. Hey, I'm free if you're free. Let's go to lunch real quick.
Yeah. 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 Investing that time again and again and again, right? Yeah. Even if it's just a snippet of time, because it makes those concerts a little more special. It makes those family vacations just a little bit more special. And the older they get, I mean, can you imagine when they, someday, right? Everyone tells me that I wish you could experience grandfatherhood before you experience fatherhood, because we'd all be happier, right? Because it just doesn't happen that way. But oh well. But anyway, so when I mean, just can you imagine still enjoying that time? And that doesn't happen by mistake at all. So, kudos to you. And fast forwarding just a little bit, I know, Kevin, that I had a very special mother. I had a very, very special mother, and you recently lost yours as well. It's my understanding, right? And tell me, do you mind sharing that a little bit? And has that made an impact in you in any way, shape, or form?
Well, yeah, I think that, we're cut by mom and dad. What I would say is, growing up, once again, I think I'm getting into that 20 to 40 year in the business thing, but growing up in the 70s, a little bit different than growing up now. But I think that there's a discipline side of it, which was my dad, but there was that positivity survivor side that was my mom.
Yeah.
And that was a heck of a combination that starts the process of molding your child, So, fast forward to most recently, I lost mom July of 22. I was, for the most part, the one taking it to her, it was cancer, and I was taking to her, her chemo appointments and stuff like that. And it was, while one would never prefer to have to do that, right, based on the circumstances, I did get to, even, kind of bond with her a little bit more during that period of time. I think I probably would have got another 6 to 12 months of that if it wasn't for COVID, because she got COVID, and that's really what cut it a little bit shorter than need be. But I would tell anyone that's lost their mom that it's tough. You're going to be reminded, if not every week, every day. There's going to be something that'll remind you of her, but just get through it the best you can.
Yeah.
And if they're still with us, treasure the moments. We're coming up on Mother's Day, right? And if there's any differences or anything, put them aside. You never want to be looking back at the wrong time.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there shoulda, coulda, wouldas of life, right?
That's right.
It's really what it comes down to. So in that, and thanks so much for just kind of sharing your mom with us, even, right? Very specifically, because Mother's Day just would have happened. By the time this airs, it will have just happened, Mother's Day. Those are, if you could have done it all over again, is there anything you would have changed in the way that you dealt with mom? And for that matter, I will ask you as well. So that's kind of like looking from the past as well as looking into the future with your boys and everybody else. Would you do anything differently now that mom has passed? We reflect, right? Because I lost mine about a year before you did, and we reflect. Is there anything that you would have done differently that others can learn from right now?
I think that what I probably would have done differently is, when you're growing up, you probably don't quite realize how lucky you are when you're growing up. There's a tendency to just naturally take some things for granted.
Yes.
You probably don't appreciate everything in the moment, and maybe it hits you 20, 30 years later in life.
Yeah. No, that's so true. That's probably the most important lesson, is that we do take it for granted, right? Because they've always been around. They're always
That's
there, right? They're always there.
Moms are bulletproof, right?
Yes, 100%. And they're just going to be there. And then all of a sudden, there's, time with them is something to really take very, very seriously. So again, when we're thinking about our vocational world, guys, you can make as much as you want. You can be a blessing to them and even help them if they need that. But really, what they really want, I know that for a fact because I see my wife go through it all the time. It's time, right? It's time. When my sons say, like, my son's coming home, he's in law school right now and he's coming home before he heads to his job. He's going to spend about 10 days here. And you would have thought the whole world just collapsed and we're right back in the COVID world and we're going to stay inside this house. And we're just going to love on my son, right? Because he couldn't wait. The whole world changed. It's like, all plans out the door because son's coming home, right? So
that's right.
And that's kind of, to our mothers, that's what they want, right?
That's part of the whole thing. That's right.
Yeah.
That's
so
right. They want that for sure.
For sure. So there's so many lessons to be learned there. And looking forward, what do you again, I do think time still fits in there, but looking forward, they're now at this age. What are you hoping continues on in the type of relationship that you have with your boys today?
Well, they're both still living at home. So there's a point in time where they're not going to be.
Yeah.
And I think I would just not want it to go from, what we are now to the big extreme where, you don't hear from them for a month or two,
Yes.
So let's keep it going the best we can, but they've got their life they have to live, also. But hopefully they'll just come to us, right? Maybe they, maybe I'm being naive. Maybe they don't want to leave the nest.
Well, so I'm at least in this case, I'm about 3 to 4 years ahead of you on this one, right? So that's the one thing I can honestly say. Well, I'm a little bit your senior on this one, but it is interesting because at the moments that I thought, I hope he comes back to ask me that question rather than asking just a peer who's not seasoned at all to be able to answer that question wisely. He has done that, right? Our sons have done that. They come back and they ask you, because this is a real life situation that can affect the rest of my life. They've come back to do that, and I see that. I honestly see that. I don't know your boys, but when I see, and people say, social media, sometimes it's false pictures. It is if it's inconsistent, but when it's consistently the same thing, that's a lifestyle. There's a certain thing about that just means, that speaks truth. And so I believe your investment in your boys, and the love that you have for your boys, and as hard as you work in your career, I think that the one thing that you did was invest the time to be around them. And they will, number one, they will come back and ask you the tough questions, the real life stuff that's going to affect them.
I'm going to write that down just to let you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. And share that part with your boys as well, because and there's nothing more humbling than when a dad gets that. And so dads and moms, just, leave yourselves open to that. Kevin, you know what? 45 minutes, I told you, would go by really fast, right?
Yes, it did.
And it does, because you and I could continue on and on, because we also know that there's a physical side of us that needs to be well prepared to have two boys, by the way, right?
That's right.
Boys are boys that way. But in 45 minutes, you've given us so many nuggets just on the vocational side of it, and really the relational side of it as well, and the well-being, and that people really can't just put into their calendars what they do on a daily basis for work. It really does take a fullness. Just in some final words and closing words from you, Kevin, on either the vocational, maybe the balance of relational, or maybe just relational. Give us a bit of something to go away with, so our listeners kind of walk away and say, I liked it.
I mean, I can go back to starting with the vocational, but this really kind of just leads into the whole thing, right? Your whole life. Once again, in this business, we have to continue to learn, win, and grind. You can reset during the day, but another part of that resetting is resetting with family, right?
Yes.
Get away, reset with family, whether it's the weekends, family and friends, right? It has to be an extension. And as you said before, it's really hard to block out 888. It doesn't work that way in our business, right?
Right.
If it's 888, people are missing business, I'm missing recruits, right? But you just have to do that. You just have to do that. So
I love it, Kevin. Resetting ourselves and resetting with family. And you said something in earlier part of the show, and you said family's number one for me. I think that on its own, by the way, I do believe that they should be number one, especially when it comes to the vocational side of it. So with that said, resetting ourselves daily, like almost every minute of the day, there's an opportunity for resetting if it needs to be. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing over the fact that number one, really over vocation, is relational, family. And Kevin, you've been tremendous. Thank you. Thank you for sharing just real life with us, right? Because that's what it is, and that's what our audience loves to hear. So I'm gonna tell you that you are off the hot seat, sir.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And what an absolute pleasure. You and I could keep going. So don't be too surprised if I knock on your door again and say, can we do a part two of something that we've already started down the path? But it absolutely is great reconnecting with you, Kevin. Wish your family the best for me. And thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Take care. I'll send you over to the green room, and you can enjoy the refreshments there, right? The virtual refreshments, right? So,
right.
And then I'll talk to you in just a sec. But all right, thanks again, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Wow. Woo. So there's an awful lot to unpack in that, right? And so, yes, you walk into the vocational side. I can't say enough, guys. It might seem to you like, I'm not sure I heard anything different than what I should already. It's one thing to hear the old school stuff. It's another thing to implement the old school stuff. And the old school stuff is what works, right? Because what the old school is communication. There's an awful lot of automation going on right now. There's an awful lot. I mean, the microwave society did that to us. The computer world did that to us. Now we got AI and just the ability for people to just sit and chat and not even be themselves because they let somebody else create their verbiage and then send that out. It's never even personal. Old school means personal. It means communicating, right? And then investing in your time. Very specifically in the vocational world, that's true. But as Kevin just shared with us, right? There is that other dynamic in your life that should mean more to you than anything else. And that is your relational side of you, your relational well-being. So guys, I hope that we've been able to at least inspire you to look not only in your vocational selves, but to be able to look at your relational selves. Do that today. Check in how you're doing with your spouse. Check in how you're doing with your kids if you have that. Check in how you're doing with your parents if you still have them with you, right? And really just do a gut check. Here's the other thing. How about your friends? Have you looked into how well you're doing there? Are you investing in them? Are you so driven that you've discarded some of your bestest of friends, the people that are actually going to live it out with you? So with that, guys, I'm just so grateful that Kevin was able to join us. I hope you guys learned from it. And until the next time, in our next episode, we'll bring more of the other well-beings in place. But for now, guys, as always, be blessed and go be a blessing to somebody. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
And that wraps another episode of Challenging Your Status Quo. We hope you found inspiration and practical wisdom to carry into your daily lives. If JA has inspired you, join our community by subscribing to the podcast. Stay connected with us at latreacoaching.com and through our social media channels where the conversation and growth continue. On behalf of JA and his whole team, we thank you for listening and invite you to keep challenging the status quo in your own life. Until next time, remember, pursue excellence, live purposefully, and embrace holistic success. We'll catch you next episode.